The massive space station called Proxima Academy floated silently against the starfield. It was bigger than most cities back on Earth. The station had been the training ground for galactic military officers for over 300 years. Every year, the best young warriors from dozens of different worlds came here to learn how to fight together against the enemies that threatened all civilized life. Today was different, though. For the first time in the Academy's long history, humans were arriving. The transport ship carrying 20 human cadets docked with a soft thud that echoed through the metal corridors. Cadet Jaewon pressed his face against the small window and stared at the enormous structure they were about to enter. He had never seen anything so large made by thinking beings. Back home, even their biggest space stations looked like toys compared to this place. "Look at the size of it," whispered his roommate Minsu from the seat beside him. The young man's eyes were wide with wonder and fear. "How many beings live in there?" "About 50,000 at any time," answered Cadet Hyaji from across the narrow aisle. She had memorized every fact about the Academy before leaving Earth. Students, teachers, support staff, and security forces from 47 different species. Jaewon felt his stomach twist with nerves. 47 species. He had trouble imagining what some of them might look like. Humans had only met a few alien races since achieving faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Most of those meetings had been brief and formal. Now they were going to live and train alongside beings they had never even seen before. The airlock hissed open, and the human cadets stepped into a world unlike anything they had ever experienced. The corridor was huge, easily 3 times taller than any hallway on Earth. Strange symbols covered the walls in dozens of different writing systems. The air smelled different too, carrying scents from worlds they could not imagine. Other cadets moved through the corridors in groups. Jaewon saw tall blue beings with 4 arms walking alongside short gray creatures with large heads and bigger eyes than seemed possible. A group of what looked like walking trees shuffled past, their bark-like skin making soft scraping sounds. In the distance, he could hear roars and clicks and whistles that he guessed were different forms of speech. "Stay together," ordered Lieutenant Commander Hayes, their human escort. He was an older man who had served as a military advisor to the Galactic Council for the past 5 years. "Remember what we talked about during the journey. You represent all of humanity here. Every action you take reflects on our entire species." The group moved through the main corridor toward the registration area. As they walked, conversations around them grew quieter. Other cadets stopped what they were doing to stare at the newcomers. Some pointed with whatever they used for hands. Others made sounds that might have been laughter or discussion. None of it sounded friendly. At the registration desk, a being that looked like a giant insect with crystal wings examined their documents with compound eyes. It spoke in a voice like breaking glass. "Humans. Yes. We have been expecting you." The translator device on the desk turned its words into English, though the mechanical voice carried none of the creature's obvious annoyance. "You have been assigned to Section C, Level 15. Basic accommodation. Your orientation begins tomorrow at 0600 station time." "Excuse me," Hyeji said politely, "but our records show we were supposed to receive standard cadet quarters." The insect being's head tilted in what might have been amusement. "Standard quarters are for standard cadets. Humans receive basic accommodation until they prove themselves worthy of better treatment." Lieutenant Commander Hayes stepped forward, but Jaewon could see from his expression that arguing would only make things worse. The human officer simply nodded and collected their room assignments. Section C turned out to be in the oldest part of the station. The corridors were narrower here and showed signs of age. Their quarters were small rooms with basic sleeping platforms, storage lockers, and nothing else. No personal space, no comfort items, no view of the stars outside. It felt more like a prison than a place for future officers to live. "Well," said Dong-yeon, trying to sound cheerful as he dropped his bag on his assigned sleeping platform, "at least we have somewhere to sleep." "Look at this," Minsu called from the small washroom. "The water pressure is barely working and the cleaning systems are broken." Jaewon examined his own room. Everything was old and worn out. The lighting was dim and flickered occasionally. The air circulation system made grinding noises. This was clearly where they put cadets they did not want to succeed. That evening, the humans gathered in the station's main dining hall for their first meal. The enormous room could easily hold thousands of beings, and tonight it was nearly full. Dozens of species sat at tables designed for their particular body types. The noise was incredible, a mix of voices, growls, clicks, and sounds that had no human equivalent. The humans found an empty table near the back of the room and sat together. The food dispensers offered meals suitable for human digestion, but the portions were smaller than what other species received, and the taste was bland and unappetizing. "They are trying to make us quit," Hyeji said quietly, keeping her voice low so others could not hear. "The poor quarters, the bad food, the way everyone stares at us. They want us to give up and go home." "Let them try," Jaewon replied, though he felt less confident than he sounded. "We did not come this far to quit because things got difficult." As if summoned by their conversation, a shadow fell across their table. Jaewon looked up to see the largest being he had ever encountered. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall with dark green scales that looked like armor plating. Its head was reptilian, with bright yellow eyes and rows of sharp teeth. Massive clawed hands rested on its hips and its tail swished slowly behind it like a weapon waiting to strike. "So these are the famous humans," the creature said in a voice like grinding stone. The translator made its words clear, but could not hide the contempt in its tone. "I am Commander Vorthak of the Saurian Defense Forces. I have been assigned to oversee your training." The entire dining hall had gone quiet. Thousands of eyes from dozens of species were watching this first meeting between the human cadets and one of the Academy's most feared instructors. Commander Vorthak studied each human face with those terrifying yellow eyes. "I have read about your species. You are soft creatures from a weak world. You have no natural weapons, no thick skin to protect you, no real combat experience against worthy opponents. Most species here have been warriors for thousands of years. You have been in space for barely 50. He leaned down, bringing his massive head closer to their table. His breath smelled like sulfur and old meat. "I do not understand why the council approved your admission to this academy. But since you are here, I will make sure you receive the full training experience. I will push you harder than any cadet has ever been pushed. Most of you will quit before the first month ends. The rest will wish they had." Jaewon felt his heart racing, but he forced himself to look directly into those yellow eyes. "We appreciate the opportunity to train here, Commander. We will do our best to meet your standards." Vorthak's laugh was like rocks falling down a mountain. "My standards, human, were set by warriors who conquered star systems before your species learned to make fire. You cannot even imagine what real military training involves." The commander straightened up to his full, terrifying height. "Classes begin tomorrow at 500. Do not be late. In my experience, humans are always late for everything important." With that, he turned and walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing through the silent dining hall. Slowly, conversations resumed around them, but Jaewon could feel eyes still watching their table. "Well," Minsu said shakily, "that could have gone worse." "How exactly could that have gone worse?" Dongyun asked. "He could have eaten one of us," Hyeji replied, though her attempt at humor did not hide the worry in her voice. Jaewon looked around the dining hall at all the different species. Some seemed friendly enough, but many watched the humans with expressions that looked like curiosity mixed with pity. They clearly expected the humans to fail quickly and dramatically. "We need to be ready for tomorrow," Jaewon said quietly. "Whatever Commander Vorthak has planned for us, we cannot give him the satisfaction of seeing us quit." The other humans nodded, but Jaewon could see the fear in their eyes. They were young people from a world where the biggest dangers were bad weather and traffic accidents. Now they were about to face military training designed by beings who had been fighting wars since before human civilization began. As they finished their meal and prepared to return to their poor quarters, Jaewon made himself a promise. No matter what Commander Vorthak did to them, no matter how impossible the training became, he would not give up. He would prove that humans belonged here among the stars, training alongside the galaxy's greatest warriors. He just hoped he was strong enough to keep that promise when the real testing began. The alarm screamed through the human quarters at exactly 0500 station time. Jaewon rolled out of his sleeping platform, his body already aching from yesterday's brutal training session. Around him, his fellow cadets moved like tired ghosts, pulling on their training uniforms and preparing for another day of punishment. 3 weeks had passed since their arrival at Proxima Academy, and every day had been worse than the last. Commander Vorthak seemed to take personal pleasure in making their lives miserable. While other species received standard military training, the humans faced impossible challenges designed to break their spirit. My shoulders feel like they are on fire, Minsu groaned as he struggled to put on his uniform. Yesterday's exercise had involved carrying heavy equipment up 15 flights of stairs, while alien cadets used working elevators. The reason given was that humans needed to build strength to match other species. At least you can still move your shoulders, replied Dong-Yun, who was walking with a slight limp. During combat training, he had been forced to spar against a rocky creature twice his size while the instructor claimed it would teach humans about fighting superior opponents. Hyeji sat quietly on her sleeping platform, staring at her hands. She had not spoken much since yesterday's strategy session, where Commander Vorthak had dismissed every suggestion she made as primitive human thinking. When she tried to explain her ideas more clearly, he had roared at her to stop wasting everyone's time with inferior human logic. "We need to eat something before training starts," Jaehwan said, though he knew their breakfast would be the same tasteless ration bars they received every morning. Other species got hot meals suited to their biology, but humans got basic nutrition packets that barely kept them functioning. The dining hall was already busy when they arrived. Alien cadets sat at their tables, enjoying proper meals and talking among themselves. When the humans walked past, conversations stopped and beings stared at them with mixtures of pity and amusement. Some made sounds that the translators did not pick up, but the tone suggested they were jokes about human weakness. At their usual table in the back corner, the humans ate their ration bars in silence. Around them, the normal noise of the dining hall continued, but it felt separate from their small group. They had become outsiders in this place, tolerated but not accepted. "Look at them," whispered a voice from a nearby table. Jaehwan glanced over and saw a group of blue-skinned cadets with 4 arms each. Their translator picked up their conversation. 3 weeks and they still have not quit. How much failure can one species endure? I heard Commander Vorthak is planning something special for them today, replied another blue cadet. My instructor said the humans will finally learn they do not belong here. It will be a relief when they leave, added a third. Watching them struggle is becoming embarrassing. Jaehwan felt his face burn with anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting into fights with other cadets would only prove their point about human aggression and lack of control. Instead, he focused on finishing his meal and preparing for whatever new torture Commander Vorthak had planned. The training ground was a massive space filled with obstacle courses, combat areas, and simulation equipment. When the humans arrived, they found Commander Vorthak waiting with his usual expression of disgust. Behind him stood several other instructors and a group of senior cadets who had come to watch. Today, we begin a new phase of your education, Vorthak announced, his voice echoing through the training area. You will participate in what we call an endurance test. It is designed to push military cadets to their absolute limits and beyond. He gestured toward a large doorway that led to the simulation chambers. You will spend the next 72 hours in a combat environment. You must complete a series of objectives while being hunted by advanced combat drones. You will receive minimal food and water. You will have no rest periods. Most importantly, you will have no help from your instructors. The watching aliens murmured among themselves. Even they seemed surprised by the intensity of what Vorthak was proposing. 72 hours was longer than any endurance test normally given to first-year cadets. This test has never been attempted by any species in their first month at the academy, Vorthak continued, his yellow eyes fixed on the humans. But I believe humans need extra motivation to reach their potential. Perhaps facing impossible odds will finally teach you the respect for military tradition that your species clearly lacks. Hyeji raised her hand hesitantly. Commander, what happens if we cannot complete the test? Vorthak's laugh was like grinding metal. Failure means immediate expulsion from the academy. You will be sent back to your little planet with a report stating that humans are not suitable for galactic military service. Your species will never be invited to train here again. The weight of his words settled over the human cadets like a heavy blanket. This was not just about their personal futures anymore. The reputation of their entire species was at stake. If they failed, humanity might never get another chance to prove itself worthy of joining the galactic community as equals. The test begins in 1 hour, Vorthak announced. Use that time to prepare yourselves mentally for failure. I will be watching personally to ensure you receive the full experience of defeat. As the other instructors and cadets dispersed, the humans remained standing in the training ground. Around them, the normal activities of the academy continued. But everything felt different now. The next 3 days would determine whether Humans had a future among the stars or would be remembered as another, primitive species that could not handle the responsibilities of advanced civilization. What do we do? Minsu asked quietly. 72 hours against combat drones with no rest and no help. Even the strongest alien species would struggle with that. We do what humans have always done, Jaewon replied, though his voice was not as steady as he wanted it to be. We adapt. We survive. We prove them wrong. But as he looked at his exhausted teammates, Jaewon wondered if determination would be enough. They were tired, discouraged, and facing a test that seemed designed specifically to destroy them. Commander Vorthak clearly expected them to fail quickly and dramatically, giving him the excuse he needed to send them home in disgrace. The hour of preparation passed quickly. Soon they stood at the entrance to the simulation chamber, wearing basic combat gear and carrying minimal supplies. Beyond the doorway lay a dark corridor that led to their testing ground. Remember, Jaewon said to his teammates, we are not just fighting for ourselves anymore. Every human who dreams of reaching the stars is counting on us. The door sealed shut behind them with a sound like a tomb closing. In the darkness ahead, red lights began to glow as the combat drones activated. Somewhere above them, Commander Vorthak was watching and waiting for the moment when human weakness would finally be exposed for all to see. The endurance test had begun, and failure meant more than just personal disappointment. It meant the end of humanity's dreams of joining the galactic community as respected partners, rather than tolerated primitives. But Jaewon had noticed something during their weeks of torment that Commander Vorthak had missed. While the alien cadets trained individually, relying on their personal strengths and species abilities, humans naturally worked together. They shared resources, supported each other, and found creative solutions that no military manual had ever considered. Perhaps that difference would be enough. Perhaps what Vorthak saw as weakness was actually humanity's greatest strength. They were about to find out. The simulation chamber was a nightmare landscape of twisted metal corridors, dark passages, and hidden dangers. Emergency lighting cast red shadows on the walls, making everything look like it was covered in blood. The air was hot and thick, making it hard to breathe. Somewhere in the darkness, combat drones waited to hunt them. Jaewon gathered his team in a small alcove near the entrance. They had studied the mission objectives during their preparation hour. 7 different targets needed to be reached and secured within 72 hours. Each target was defended by automated systems and patrol drones. The course was designed to test every aspect of military training: tactics, endurance, problem-solving, and individual combat skills. We stay together, Jaewon whispered, checking his basic weapon and scanner. Most species would split up and try to complete objectives individually, but we work as a team. The drones will be programmed to expect standard alien tactics, Hiji added, her strategic mind already working on the problem. They will not be ready for human cooperation patterns. A distant mechanical whir echoed through the corridors. The hunt had begun. The first 12 hours tested every limit the humans thought they had. The combat drones were fast, well-armed, and programmed with combat data from dozens of species. But they had one weakness. They expected their targets to behave like typical alien cadets. When Minsu was cornered by 2 drones in a narrow passage, most aliens would have tried to fight their way out using superior strength or natural weapons. Instead, the humans used teamwork. Donghyun created a distraction while Hyeji found an alternate route, allowing Jaehwan to disable the drones from an unexpected angle. By hour 24, they had secured 3 objectives while most individual aliens would have managed only 1, but the constant stress was taking its toll. Their water rations were nearly gone, and their food supply was running dangerously low. I cannot keep this pace, Minsu gasped as they rested in a maintenance shaft between drone patrols. His face was pale and covered in sweat. The alien-designed course was pushing human physiology beyond safe limits. None of us can, Jaewon replied honestly, but we keep going anyway. That is what humans do. Hour 36 brought their first real crisis. While attempting to reach the 4th objective, Donghyun stepped on a concealed pressure plate. The trap was designed for heavier alien species, but it still caught his leg and twisted his ankle badly. He collapsed with a cry of pain that echoed through the metal corridors. "Leave me," he whispered through gritted teeth. "Take the others and complete the mission. Do not let my failure destroy humanity's chances." The suggestion horrified his teammates. In alien military tradition, the strong survived while the weak were left behind. Individual achievement mattered more than group success. But humans had different values. "We do not leave people behind," Jae-won said firmly, helping Dong-hyun to his feet. "We finish this together or not at all." Above them, in the observation deck, Commander Vorthak watched with growing frustration. He had expected the humans to quit within the first day, giving him a perfect excuse to expel them from the academy. Instead, they were succeeding through methods that made no sense according to established military doctrine. "They are cheating somehow," he growled to the other instructors watching the test. "No first-month cadets could perform at this level." "The recordings show no rule violations," replied Commander Zyloth, a crystalline being who served as the Academy's senior tactical instructor. "They are simply using cooperation strategies that our simulation programming did not anticipate." Cooperation. Vorthak spat the word like it tasted bad. Real warriors fight alone. They prove their individual worth through personal strength and skill. This human weakness will fail them when they face real combat. But on the screen showing the simulation, the humans continued to defy expectations. Supporting the injured Dong-hyun slowed their progress, but it also forced them to find more creative solutions. They discovered maintenance tunnels that bypassed drone patrols. They learned to use the facility's own systems against the automated defenses. By hour 48, they had reached the fifth objective despite carrying Dong-hyun for half the distance. The alien observers began murmuring among themselves. Some showed grudging respect for the human determination they were witnessing. Hour 60 brought exhaustion that pushed them beyond rational thought. They had been awake for nearly 3 full days, living on adrenaline and determination. Their hands shook as they worked. Their vision blurred from fatigue. Several times one of them nearly walked into drone patrols because their reflexes were too slow. "We cannot make it," Hyeji whispered as they huddled in another hiding spot. Her strategic mind, usually so sharp and clear, was clouded by exhaustion. "The sixth objective is too well defended. The drones have adapted to our tactics. We are finished." But Jae-won was studying the tactical display on his scanner, looking for something the others had missed. Human pattern recognition, developed through millions of years of evolution, was still working even when conscious thought began to fail. "Look at the patrol routes," he said, pointing to the screen. "The drones are following predictable patterns because they are machines. But there is a gap in their coverage every 17 minutes. If we time it exactly right, we can reach the objective while they are all looking in other directions." "That timing has to be perfect," Minsu warned. "If we are wrong by even 30 seconds, we will be caught in the open with nowhere to hide." "Then we do not make mistakes," Jae-won replied with more confidence than he felt. The plan worked. Moving like ghosts through corridors they had memorized over 60 hours of constant pressure, the humans reached the sixth objective and secured it just as the drone patrol returned. They had 12 hours left to reach the final target. The seventh objective was the hardest of all. Located at the center of the simulation facility, it was defended by the most advanced combat drones and the most complex security systems. The route there passed through open areas where hiding was impossible. "This is where they expect us to fail," Jae-won realized as they studied the approach. "The final test is designed to break whoever gets this far." They made their approach during hour 70, moving on determination alone. Their bodies had passed exhaustion hours ago and now ran on something deeper. When the final combat drones detected them, the humans did not try to hide or run. Instead, they worked together with perfect coordination born from shared struggle. Hyeji provided tactical analysis while Minsu created diversions. Dong-hyun, still injured but refusing to quit, managed equipment and supplies. Jae-hwan coordinated their movements, turning 4 exhausted humans into a single efficient unit that the drones could not predict or counter. They secured the final objective with 23 minutes remaining in the test. As the simulation ended and the lights came up, the 4 humans stood in the center of the facility, supporting each other and barely able to believe what they had accomplished. They had completed a test that no first-year cadets had ever attempted, let alone finished successfully. Above them, the observation deck had gone completely silent. Dozens of alien instructors and senior cadets stared at the screen showing the human achievement. They had witnessed something that challenged everything they believed about military training and species capabilities. Commander Vorthak stared at the display screens with growing rage. The impossible had happened. Not only had the humans completed his test, they had done it in a way that made his own species' methods look primitive. Worst of all, they had succeeded through cooperation and mutual support, rather than individual strength. His reputation as a trainer, built over decades of breaking weak cadets, was now in question. If word spread that humans could succeed where stronger alien species failed, his authority would be undermined throughout the academy. The rage built in his chest like a fire, fed by wounded pride and the destruction of beliefs he had held his entire life. As he watched the humans helping each other stand after their incredible achievement, Vorthak made a decision that would change everything. He would not allow this humiliation to stand. These primitive humans needed to be taught their proper place in the galactic order, and he was going to be the one to teach them. The confrontation was about to begin. The simulation chamber doors hissed open and the humans stumbled out into the bright lights of the training area. After 72 hours in the dark, artificial corridors, the normal lighting felt like staring into the sun. Jae-hwan blinked rapidly, trying to clear his vision while supporting Dong-hyun, who was still limping from his injured ankle. They had done it. Against all odds, they had completed every objective in the test. Around them, dozens of alien cadets and instructors gathered to witness their emergence from what everyone expected to be their failure and humiliation. Medical, team to training Bay 7, announced a voice over the communication system. Cadets require immediate evaluation after extended simulation exercise. But before the medical technicians could reach them, a heavy footstep echoed through the training area. The gathered aliens quickly moved aside as Commander Vorthak approached, his massive form casting a shadow over the exhausted humans. His yellow eyes burned with an anger that seemed to heat the air around him. "Stop," he commanded, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversations like a blade. The medical team froze in place, unwilling to disobey a senior instructor. "No medical assistance until I have debriefed these cadets." Jae-hwan felt his heart sink. Even in their moment of triumph, Vorthak was going to find ways to make them suffer. The commander's expression promised that their success had only made their situation worse. "Explain to me," Vorthak said, his voice dangerously quiet, "how 4 primitive humans completed a test that has never been attempted by first-month cadets of any species." "We worked together, sir," Jae-hwan replied, trying to keep his voice respectful despite his exhaustion. "We used teamwork and creative problem-solving to overcome the challenges." "Teamwork," Vorthak repeated the word like it was poisonous. "You mean you violated the basic principles of military training? Individual excellence is what matters in real combat, not this human weakness you call cooperation." Hyeji stepped forward, her analytical mind still functioning despite her exhaustion. "With respect, Commander, our methods were effective. We completed all 7 objectives within the time limit. The test parameters did not forbid cooperative tactics." The commander's massive head swiveled toward her, those terrible yellow eyes focusing on her face. "Did I ask for your opinion, Cadet? In real military organizations, junior personnel speak only when ordered to do so." "But sir," Hyeji continued, her scientific training making her want to explain their success, "our approach demonstrates that different species might have different strengths that could benefit the galactic military. Diversity of tactics could be an advantage against unknown enemies." Vorthak's roar shook the entire training area. Several smaller aliens actually took steps backward from the sheer force of his anger. "Silence! You dare lecture me about military tactics? My species has conquered star systems while yours was still learning to make fire." The gathering crowd had grown larger. Word of the humans' success was spreading through the academy, and cadets from multiple species had come to see what was happening. Some looked impressed by what the humans had accomplished. Others seemed confused by Vorthak's extreme reaction to their success. "You cheated," Vorthak declared, his voice carrying to every corner of the training area. "There is no other explanation for your performance. No species achieves such results without superior technology or outside assistance." The test was monitored. "By your own systems," Jae-hwan pointed out as politely as possible. "The recordings will show that we used only standard equipment and followed all established rules." "The recordings," Vorthak snarled, "show impossible results. Therefore the recordings must be wrong, or you found ways to manipulate them." "I will not allow this academy's reputation to be damaged by human deception. Murmurs rippled through the watching crowd. Even alien cadets who had little love for humans seemed uncomfortable with Vorthak's accusations. The test had been conducted under full supervision with multiple recording systems. Claiming the humans had somehow cheated without evidence was damaging the commander's own credibility. Commander Xylath, the crystalline tactical instructor, stepped forward from the crowd. Commander Vorthak, the simulation data has been reviewed by 3 independent systems. No irregularities were detected. The humans completed the test through approved methods. Vorthak spun toward the crystalline being, his tail lashing behind him like a weapon. Are you questioning my judgment, Commander Xylath? Are you suggesting that I cannot recognize cheating when I see it? I am suggesting that the evidence does not support accusations of misconduct, Xylath replied calmly. Her crystalline form reflected the training area lights, making her seem to glow with inner fire. The humans succeeded through tactics we have not seen before, but that does not make them invalid. Tactics we have not seen before, Vorthak repeated mockingly. You mean primitive human methods that have no place in civilized military doctrine? These creatures come from a world where they fight each other with crude weapons and crude strategies. They know nothing of honor or proper combat. His voice rose to a roar again. I will not stand here and watch the Academy's standards be lowered to accommodate human inadequacy. If they want to be treated as equals, they must prove themselves according to our standards, not their own. Jaewon felt anger building in his chest. For weeks they had endured every insult and challenge Vorthak had thrown at them. They had succeeded at tasks designed to make them fail. They had proven their worth through actions rather than words. But nothing they did would ever be enough for this alien who had decided to hate them before they even arrived. What more do you want from us? Jaewon asked, his politeness finally slipping. We completed your impossible test. We followed every rule and exceeded every requirement. If that is not enough to earn your respect, then tell us what would be. The training area went completely silent. Every being present understood that something important was happening. The confrontation between human determination and alien prejudice had reached its breaking point. Vorthak's eyes narrowed to burning slits. Respect? You think completing one test earns you respect? Respect is earned through years of proven service, through blood spilled in real combat, through victories against worthy enemies. You are children playing at being warriors. He took a step closer to the humans, his massive form towering over them. You want to know what would earn my respect? Prove that humans can fight as individuals. Prove that you are not dependent on this weakness you call teamwork. Face me in single combat and show me that your species deserves to stand among real warriors. The challenge hung in the air like electricity before a storm. Around them, the watching aliens stirred with excitement and nervousness. Challenges between instructors and cadets were rare and dangerous. Vorthak was not just larger and stronger than any human. He was a veteran warrior with decades of combat experience. That would be inappropriate, Commander Xylath interjected. Instructor-cadet combat challenges are forbidden except under specific ceremonial conditions. Then we will call it a training exercise, Vorthak replied, his voice heavy with menace. A demonstration of proper combat technique for the education of all cadets present. Jaewon looked at his exhausted teammates. They had already proven everything they needed to prove. The smart thing would be to decline the challenge and report Vorthak's behavior to higher authorities. But he could see in the eyes of the watching aliens that backing down now would undo everything they had accomplished. If they refused to face Vorthak, they would forever be seen as cowards who succeeded through tricks rather than true strength. Their victory in the endurance test would be dismissed as meaningless. Humanity's reputation would be worse than if they had never come to the Academy at all. I accept your training exercise, Commander, Jaewon said quietly. The crowd erupted in excited chatter. This was going to be the most dramatic event in the Academy's recent history. A human cadet, exhausted from 3 days of continuous testing, was going to face one of the most feared instructors in single combat. Vorthak's smile showed rows of razor-sharp teeth. Excellent. We will settle this question of human worthiness once and for all. As the crowd formed a circle around them, Jaehwan tried to prepare himself for what was coming. He was tired, hungry, and facing an opponent with every possible advantage. But sometimes, when everything seemed hopeless, humans found strengths they never knew they had. The confrontation was about to become a battle, and the fate of humanity's future among the stars hung in the balance. The circle of watching aliens grew larger as word spread through the academy. Cadets abandoned their training exercises and meals to witness what everyone expected to be a quick and brutal lesson in the differences between species. In the center of the ring, Jaehwan stood facing Commander Vorthak, looking impossibly small beside the massive reptilian warrior. "This is madness," Minsu whispered to Hyeji. "Jaehwan is exhausted from the test. Vorthak outweighs him by at least 100 kilograms and has natural weapons we cannot match." "He knows that," Hyeji replied, watching her friend with worried eyes. "But if he backs down now, everything we accomplished means nothing. They will always see us as weak." Commander Vorthak began removing his formal instructor's jacket, revealing arms thick with muscle and covered in scales that looked like natural armor. His claws extended slightly, catching the light like polished knives. Every movement showed the confidence of a predator that had never known defeat. "Before we begin this educational demonstration," Vorthak announced to the crowd, "let me explain what you are about to witness. This human will try to use the same cooperative tactics that allowed their species to cheat through the endurance test. But in real combat, there is no team to hide behind. There is only individual strength against individual strength." He turned those burning yellow eyes toward Jaehwan. "When you fall, as you surely will, remember that your failure represents the weakness of your entire species." "Humans have no place among true warriors," Jaehwan said nothing. He was using every moment to study his opponent, looking for weaknesses that might not be obvious. Vorthak was bigger, stronger, and armed with natural weapons, but size could also mean slower reflexes. Confidence could mean carelessness. "Combat positions," Vorthak commanded, dropping into a fighting stance that showcased his massive reach and powerful claws. The pose was designed to intimidate as much as to fight, making him look even larger and more dangerous. Jaehwan took his own stance, one that looked smaller and more defensive by comparison. Many of the watching aliens made sounds that might have been amusement or pity. The difference between the fighters seemed so great that the outcome appeared decided before the first blow was struck. "Begin," declared Commander Xylath, though her crystalline voice carried clear reluctance. For a moment, neither fighter moved. Vorthak studied his opponent with predatory patience, waiting for Jaehwan to make the first mistake. The human remained perfectly still, his breathing steady despite his exhaustion. Then Vorthak attacked. The alien commander moved with surprising speed for his size, closing the distance between them in 2 powerful strides. His right hand swept down in a devastating arc, claws extended to their full length aimed at Jaehwan's head and neck. The blow carried enough force to seriously injure or kill a human. The watching crowd held its breath. This was the moment when human weakness would be exposed for all to see. The primitive newcomers would learn their proper place in the galactic order through painful but necessary defeat. But something impossible happened. Instead, Jaehwan moved, not with the wild panic that most beings would show when facing death, but with calm precision that seemed to slow time itself. He stepped forward and to the right, placing himself inside Vorthak's reach where the claws could not gain full power. His left hand came up to catch the alien's wrist while his right grabbed the elbow. For one frozen instant, Vorthak realized his mistake. He had expected the human to retreat or try to block the attack. Instead, Jaehwan had moved closer, using the commander's own momentum against him. What happened next shocked every being present. Using leverage and timing that seemed impossible for someone so small, Jaehwan redirected Vorthak's attack into a throwing technique that sent the massive alien flying through the air. The commander, who outweighed the human by more than double, crashed into the training area wall with a sound like a landslide. The silence that followed was complete. Hundreds of alien beings stared in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. A human cadet, exhausted from 3 days of continuous testing, had just defeated one of the Academy's most feared instructors in single combat. Not through luck or accident, but with a display of skill that none of them had imagined possible. Vorthak slid down the wall and crumpled to the floor, stunned and gasping. His yellow eyes were wide with shock and something that might have been fear. In all his years of combat, he had never been thrown like that. The technique had been perfect, using his own strength and speed to destroy him. Jaewon stood calmly in the center of the ring, not celebrating or gloating, simply waiting to see what would happen next. His breathing was steady and his posture relaxed, as if throwing a creature 3 times his size was nothing unusual. "Impossible," someone whispered from the crowd. The words seemed to break the spell of silence, and suddenly everyone was talking at once. Alien voices in dozens of languages filled the training area with sounds of amazement, disbelief, and growing respect. Vorthak struggled to his feet, his pride wounded more than his body. The humiliation of being defeated by a human was beyond anything he could accept. His hand moved toward the ceremonial combat blade at his belt, the one that marked his rank as a senior instructor. "This is not finished," he snarled, his voice thick with rage and shame. "I challenge you to formal combat with edged weapons. We will settle this properly according to military tradition." But before he could draw the blade, other instructors stepped forward to restrain him. Commander Zilath moved between Vorthak and Jaewon, her crystalline form reflecting the lights in patterns of warning. "The demonstration is complete," she announced firmly. "No further combat is authorized." "He cheated somehow," Vorthak insisted, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Humans do not possess such abilities. It is impossible." "The only thing impossible here," replied a new voice, "is your inability to accept what everyone witnessed." The crowd parted to make way for Admiral Kenth, the Academy's commanding officer. The elderly Centaurian's forearms were crossed in displeasure, and his compound eyes reflected multiple images of the scene before him. His arrival meant that word of the confrontation had reached the highest levels of the Academy administration. "Commander Vorthak," the Admiral continued, "you have conducted yourself in a manner unbecoming of an instructor at this institution. Your challenges to cadets, your accusations without evidence, and your refusal to accept the results of fair combat demonstrate a serious lack of professional judgment." Vorthak tried to respond, but Admiral Kenth continued speaking. "Furthermore, your assumptions about human capabilities have been proven completely wrong. This cadet has demonstrated skills that would be impressive in any species, regardless of their technological level or time and space." The Admiral turned his multiple eyes toward Jaewon. "Cadet, your performance in both the endurance test and this combat demonstration has exceeded all expectations. You have shown that humans possess qualities that will be valuable additions to our galactic military forces." Around them, the watching crowd began to disperse, but the conversations continued. Jaewon could hear aliens discussing what they had seen, and the tone had changed completely. Where before there had been amusement and pity, now there was curiosity and respect. "How did you do that?" asked a blue-skinned cadet with 4 arms, approaching Jaewon with obvious interest. "That throwing technique was unlike anything in our combat databases. My species has been developing hand-to-hand combat methods for thousands of years," Jaewon replied honestly. "We learned to fight without natural weapons or thick armor. We had to become skilled with leverage and timing instead of relying on raw strength." Other alien cadets gathered around, asking questions about human combat techniques and military history. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, humans were being treated as equals rather than curiosities or failures. But as Jaewon answered their questions, he noticed something else. The way they looked at him and his teammates had changed completely. The pity and amusement were gone, replaced by something much more valuable: genuine respect earned through demonstrated ability. The confrontation was over, but its effects would be felt throughout the Academy for years to come. Humans had proven they belonged among the stars, not as junior partners or charity cases, but as warriors worthy of respect from any species in the galaxy. Commander Vorthak, meanwhile, stood alone near the wall where he had fallen, watching the crowd gather around the humans he had tried to humiliate. His career was effectively over, destroyed by his own prejudice and the very real skills of the species he had underestimated. The Academy would never be the same. Wanka Part 6. New Respect and Revelation. 3 months had passed since the confrontation that changed everything at Proxima Academy. The morning sun streamed through the massive viewport of the main dining hall, casting long shadows across tables where humans now sat freely among their alien classmates. The segregation that had marked their early weeks was nothing more than an uncomfortable memory. Jaewon picked at his breakfast, which was no longer the tasteless ration bars they had been forced to endure. Real food, prepared according to human nutritional needs, sat on his tray alongside the meals his alien friends were eating. The change represented more than just better nutrition. It was a symbol of acceptance that had been earned through demonstrated worth rather than demanded through complaints. The investigation report came through yesterday, announced Hyegi as she joined him at their table. She carried a datapad containing the official findings of the Academy Review Board. Commander Vorthak has been transferred to a supply depot in the Outer Rim. His teaching credentials have been suspended pending further review. Minsu, who had fully recovered from his injuries during the endurance test, shook his head sadly. I almost feel sorry for him. His whole worldview was built on the idea that some species are naturally superior to others. When we proved him wrong, it destroyed everything he believed about himself. Do not waste your sympathy, replied Dongyun, his ankle now completely healed. He chose to hate us before we even met him. His prejudice nearly cost humanity its chance to join the galactic community. The consequences are his own responsibility. At nearby tables, mixed groups of cadets discussed their upcoming assignments and shared stories from their home worlds. The sight would have been impossible just months earlier, when species segregation was an unspoken rule. Now a four-armed, Tethan cadet helped a crystalline Zephyrian with combat techniques, while a group that included both humans and reptilian saurians planned a joint training exercise. The changes went far beyond social integration. The Academy's curriculum had been quietly revised to include tactical concepts that humans had introduced. Team-based problem-solving, adaptive strategy development, and cross-species cooperation were now standard parts of military education. What had once been dismissed as primitive human weakness was now recognized as advanced military thinking. Cadet Jaewon called a familiar crystalline voice. Commander Zelath approached their table, her reflective surface catching the morning light in patterns that indicated pleasure. I have news that should interest you and your teammates. The humans straightened to attention, though the formal gesture was no longer born from fear of punishment. Commander Zelath had become something of a mentor to them, helping to integrate human tactical concepts into the Academy's teaching methods. The Galactic Military Council has completed its review of your performance here, she continued. Based on your achievements, particularly your success in the endurance test and subsequent training exercises, they have made an unusual decision. She paused, her crystalline form shifting to patterns that suggested importance. Humanity has been invited to establish a permanent training exchange program with the Academy. Furthermore, human tactical doctrines are being studied for integration into standard galactic military protocols. The implications hit them immediately. What had started as a test to see if humans could survive galactic military training had become recognition that humans had something valuable to contribute to galactic military thinking. There is more, Commander Zelath added. The Council has also fast-tracked human admission to advanced command training programs. Several of you, including Cadet Jaehwan, have been selected for accelerated promotion tracks that normally take other species years to qualify for. Around them, alien cadets who had overheard the conversation began offering congratulations. The enthusiasm seemed genuine rather than forced politeness. Through their actions over the past months, humans had earned real respect from beings who had initially seen them as inferior primitives. But the most significant news came during the afternoon briefing in the main assembly hall. Admiral Kent stood before the gathered cadets and instructors, his compound eyes reflecting the serious nature of his announcement. As many of you know, the Admiral began, our long-range monitoring stations have finally traced the source of the Void Swarm threat. The enemy fleet that has been consuming entire star systems is larger than our worst projections suggested. They will reach the core worlds within 2 years. A murmur of concern rippled through the assembled beings. The Void Swarm had been a distant threat for decades, something that happened to frontier colonies and remote outposts. The idea that it might threaten the heart of galactic civilization was terrifying. The Galactic Council has authorized the formation of the largest military fleet in recorded history, Admiral Kent continued. Every species will contribute ships and personnel to this final defense force. The fate of our entire civilization may depend on the success of this mission. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the crowd. More importantly, this threat has made clear that our traditional approaches to warfare may not be sufficient. The enemy uses tactics we have never encountered, Attacks in ways our military doctrines were not designed to counter. J1 felt a chill of understanding. The Admiral was building toward something significant. For this reason, Admiral Kent announced, the Fleet Command structure will incorporate new tactical approaches developed right here at this academy. Multi-species cooperation teams, adaptive strategy protocols, and rapid response methods pioneered by our human cadets will be central to our battle plans. The assembly hall erupted in excited conversation. What had started as an experiment with primitive newcomers had become a crucial element in the galaxy's survival strategy. Furthermore, the Admiral continued once the noise died down. Cadet J1 and his team will be graduating early and receiving immediate commissions as junior officers in the combined fleet. Their unique experience with cross-species cooperation makes them ideal candidates for leadership roles in humanity's first major contribution to galactic defense. After the assembly, as the cadets filed out to return to their quarters, J1 found himself walking beside Kestra, a Saurian cadet who had initially joined in the harassment during their early weeks. The reptilian being had become one of their closest friends after witnessing their performance in the endurance test. I owe you an apology, Kestra said, her scaled features showing embarrassment. When you first arrived, I believed what Commander Vorthak taught us about species hierarchy. I thought strength and natural weapons were all that mattered in warfare. You were not the only one who thought that way, Jaehwan replied diplomatically. We all learned things we did not expect during our time here. But you humans taught us something more important than combat techniques, Kestra continued. You showed us that refusing to give up, even when everything seems hopeless, can be more powerful than any natural weapon. That lesson might be what saves us all when we face the Void Swarm. That evening, as Jaehwan stood at the viewport in his quarters looking out at the stars, he reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him to this point. 6 months ago, he had been a cadet from a species nobody respected, facing discrimination and seemingly impossible challenges. Now he was a junior officer in the most important military mission in galactic history, serving alongside beings who had learned to value human contributions to their mutual survival. The prejudice and hatred they had faced had been transformed into respect and partnership through actions rather than words. His door chimed, and Hyeji entered carrying a datapad with their new assignment details. We have been assigned to the flagship of the 3rd Battle Group, she announced with barely contained excitement. Mixed crew of 47 different species, all working together using the cooperative protocols we helped develop. Any word on our specific duties? Jaehwan asked. Cross-species tactical coordination, she replied with a smile. They want us to do exactly what we have been doing all along. Help different species work together effectively. Apparently, that skill is now considered one of the most valuable assets the fleet possesses. As they prepared for sleep, knowing that tomorrow would begin their transition from cadets to active military officers, Jaehwan thought about Commander Vorthak's prediction that humans would never earn respect through their weakness and cooperation. The former instructor had been wrong about almost everything, but his actions had inadvertently created the circumstances that allowed humans to prove their true worth. The galaxy was about to face its greatest threat, and humanity would stand alongside their alien partners as equals in the defense of civilization. What had started as a test of human worthiness had become proof that diversity of thought and approach was essential for survival. In an uncertain universe, the stars outside the viewport held both promise and danger, but Jaehwan no longer feared what lay ahead. Humans had found their place among the stars, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the same qualities that had allowed them to survive and thrive on their dangerous homeworld. Adaptability, cooperation, and an absolute refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds.